Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Daily Bullet, the Second Amendment Foundation show that promotes people who are helping to expand our Second Amendment rights. Joining me today, Trish Harrold. Trish is the president of the Nebraska Firearms Association. I cannot talk today. Trish, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started with what is Nebraska Firearms Owners Association and how long has it been around?
Sure. We are Nebraska's Second Amendment grassroots, completely volunteer-based organization. We've been working in the state of Nebraska almost 15 plus years. I've been honored to serve on the board of directors in the role of president for over the last 4 plus years. Prior to that, I had joined the board as a secretary. And we work specifically with our state capital, our unicameral legislature, to help advance education and effective legislation for gun rights.
Okay, so let's talk about the organization's been around for about 15 years. What are some successes that NFOA has had up to this year?
So many of our successes have dealt with primarily helping to preserve our Second Amendment rights. Article 1, Section 1 of the Nebraska Constitution is fairly explicit with regards to the right to bear arms for all lawful and legal purposes, for competitive shooting, for self-defense, for hunting, all the myriad of reasons anyone would want to own a firearm. We've worked extensively to help clarify and expand concealed carry opportunities within our state, prohibit cities from enacting ordinances that further infringe on our rights. Most recently, some of our best achievements have been able to stop a red flag law that had attempted to be put forward the last couple of years. We had an amazing turnout with regards to fighting that. Also, most recently, we had a bill that came forward that was attempting to restrict long guns, both shotguns and rifles, somewhat basically creating like an assault weapons ban approach. We had over 500 people show up to the state capitol that day for the hearing, which effectively killed it, which was excellent.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk specifically about what's happening this year in the Nebraska legislature. You've got some pretty good bills that are up in front of the legislature this year. Specifically, you've got a bill that would expand the Castle Doctrine, and you've got a bill that would basically make the entire state of Nebraska a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Could you talk about those for just a little bit?
Sure, we're actually very excited. One of the things that's interesting, we work really closely with our elected officials, and oftentimes are called upon to ask them for crafting the language and doing research and analysis. And we were very excited to work with Senator Julie Slama on her bill, LB 300, which basically goes to clarify and expand the concepts of Castle Doctrine in the state of Nebraska. Our current Castle Doctrine law, we often refer to it as Castle Doctrine Light, because it places the burden of innocence, if you will, on the part of the homeowner who's defending themselves or their loved ones in their home. Many of us understand the concept of innocent until proven guilty. With the current language, that provision isn't necessarily as clearly provided to the homeowner. So this basically puts the presumption of innocence on the homeowner for justifiable use of a firearm to defend themselves. So that rebuttal presumption, which is really under the reasonable person standard, which is another element of law, that what would another person do given the same circumstances? And so it places the burden on the state having to prove that you did not act in a reasonable manner in defending yourself or your home.
Well, and thinking about it from a common sense perspective, if somebody's breaking into your home, you can reasonably expect they're not there to share a beer or watch TV with you.
Correct. And some of the concerns that we had is oftentimes the homeowner's interpretation of behavior of the violent criminal actor. Oftentimes the evidence is not necessarily there after the fact. It's the conversation that the homeowner has with yelling through the door, "Don't come in, I'm armed, I've called 911, leave us alone, help. And then that violent criminal actor continues to violently break into the home. And that really, from a common sense perspective, really communicates to the homeowner, this person has malintent. They're not acting in a reasonable, neighborly way, trying to come over and have a cup of coffee. Their intention is to harm you. So what's nice about that is it does bring common sense to common sense gun law.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit. We may come back to this, but let's switch gears right now and talk a little bit about the Second Amendment Sanctuary Act.
Got it.
Let's face it, this will release, believe it or not, it looks like on Inauguration Day, but it looks like there's nothing good coming out of Washington, D.C. over about the next at least 2 years. And Nebraska is looking to kind of mitigate that. Is that the right way to put that?
Yeah, exactly. All of us are very familiar, obviously, with the Second Amendment, what it means, what it was intended to mean from the original writings, that the infringements of an individual's right to own, possess, and transport firearms should not be infringed, should not be limited, should not be restricted. And as we all know, watching what's happening in Washington, there are already several bills that have come forward that attempt to do that very thing. And many of them are very concerning with regards to even confiscation, right? Confiscation of different types of firearms or magazines of a certain capacity and what have you. And so the Second Amendment Preservation Act basically establishes that Nebraska is not going to permit the utilization of any of our own personnel, law enforcement or otherwise, to basically support like a federal confiscation, which is great. So if the federal government wants to come in and attempt to do what they'd like to do, they're not going to do it with the support of any Nebraskan personnel.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, your NFOA is involved in legislation, promoting good legislation, fighting against bad legislation. What are some other things NFOA does?
So our group partners with other nonprofit organizations that have objectives that align with our values. So one of the things I'm most proud of is we have a really strong relationship with the Nebraska chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So we work at a grassroots level across the state, educating ranges and FFLs and small gun stores, what have you, on effective ways for us to combat some of the myths that exist within the firearm community, that a firearm owner can't seek help and support and go get medical care when they're having a mental health challenge. We work to further education on alternatives as well within the community for people to seek support. And we do so in partnership with them because of their relationship with the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which has done such a great job in creating a wonderful educational and firearm owner friendly program. Additionally, we work with some other conservative organizations helping to help others understand their civic duties, their civic rights with regards to representing their positions with regards to our constitutional rights. And we'll work collaboratively to provide for seminars and workshops on like firearm safety with children, and those types of things.
Okay, very cool. We're coming up on the time we have for today, but to go back to the legislation for just a minute, it was LB 188 and LB 300 were the two bills we talked about. What do you think the chances are those passing, and then should they pass, the governor actually signing them into law?
So I do know for sure that if effectively brought forth from committee, debated on the floor and passed, that Governor Ricketts would certainly sign those two. I feel strongly that the clarification of defense in the home, the LB 300, clarification of castle doctrine, when you look at it upon the merits of the factual nature and the objectivity of what it's really attempting to do, there's really a good chance. So even though the committee, which is the Judiciary Committee in the state of Nebraska, may not lean too gun friendly, we do have the benefit of a tremendously energized membership. We have almost over 10,000 members, formal members in our group, and over 20,000 followers in the state of Nebraska. And with the importance of this particular bill in comparison to the previous hearing where we had almost 500 people show up, we're hoping that the voices of Nebraskans are heard, both at the hearing in a physical form, as well as, writing your senator and sending them an email to encourage members of the Judiciary Committee to give it a good hearing, and if presented well, pass it on through to get it voted in.
So we're going to run long. No big deal. But this just kicked a question into my head. What are the effects right now of COVID-19, all the lockdowns and all that, on the Nebraska legislature?
Sure. So at the unicameral, they have standard procedures in place: 6 feet social distancing, masks, physical barriers, and what have you. From what I understand, they are still continuing to have in-person hearings, probably likely having to expand the locations where we wait in order to participate in those hearings, so that we don't have necessarily the crowd capability that we had last year. We might just find ourselves kind of split up across the entire unicameral when a larger hearing might happen. And that's where we're really going to encourage those folks who have concerns about COVID. The same impact of verbal testimony at the hearing is achieved when you send in an email or a letter or a phone call. And so don't let COVID stop you from having your voice be heard.
Very cool. Well, we are, like I said, we're going to be running long. But before we go, if somebody's interested in NFOA, how do they find out more information? How do they become a member? All that good stuff.
Great. So I highly encourage everyone to visit www.nebraskafirearmsowners.org. Membership in our organization is free. We never charge for membership. That's part of our commitment to being truly a grassroots organization. So visit nebraskafirearms.org. You can also find us on Facebook under the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association.
Very cool. That's kind of unusual, a gun rights organization that isn't asking for money. That's you're kind of a unicorn in that respect.
We're proud of that. It's been part of our founding documents from the get-go, and we're proud to continue to do that. It's not saying that we don't welcome donations, but we are very, very frugal, and we ensure that the monies used are for a great effect.
I very much appreciate that. It reminds me a whole lot of, the company I work for, Second Amendment Foundation. The membership for us is $15 a year. You're not going to break the bank. But both the NFOA and the Second Amendment Foundation do a lot with a really, really, really small amount of people, and are very effective.
Definitely agree. The board member, we have 7 board members, small groups of volunteers. But what I really appreciate is when I make a call out to our membership of 10,000 plus, when we really need them, they're there for us.
Well, very cool. Well, Trish, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
So everybody, if you would, please subscribe to the channel. When you do, hit the notification bell so you know when we're going to be releasing another show. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and join us next time.